Alright, so this episode of Axleworks, my cleaning OCD gets a bit out of hand and we end up tearing apart an entirely perfectly good 80,000 k old motor, and yeah, kind of explodes everywhere. And then we're just going to go through and clean it all up, and you guys can follow me on that little journey. I started by removing the sensors. So as you can see this bit of the video here, I'm just removing the cam position sensors. Next I'll remove the two knock sensors in the V of the block. Not gonna lie, those little bastards did not want to come out of the casting in the head. They needed a bit of persuasion with a very small pry bar. But I'm happy to say they came out alright, and I managed to not break anything. So that was a win, because they're not particularly cheap if I had to buy them brand new. Out comes next is the crank position sensor. As you'll hear, I made a few comments. Evidently it did not want to come out. Oh, it was pretty dirty. Next, I started on the cam cover bolts and the front cover that is for the timing belt in this motor. Be aware there is another sensor just behind this cover, which you've sort of got to pry away and the cover and then push the grommet in so you can get the wiring back through. As I'm taking these parts off, I'm doing my best to make sure that I keep the specific bolts that came from them in with them. Where I could, I was actually just trying to put them back into the bolt holes, but obviously later on, once everything comes apart, it becomes too hard to leave bolts in holes as you're trying to clean things. So definitely recommend get yourself some good bags and a paint or a marker, and mark and bag everything. It will make your life so much easier later on. Next, I started taking off some of the ancillaries. So what's coming off now is the alternator that I had test fitted. As I'm playing this back to myself now, I need to fast forward a whole heap of this because this is not good YouTube content for anything. So there's going to be a whole lot of bits now. I'm going to fast forward to about 20 times. So what took me hours is going to be minutes for you guys. I really did have to feel sorry for this engine. It might have only done 80 odd thousand Ks, but it certainly wasn't looked after very well. The valve covers and everything I'm taking off the motor, it will be run through a ultrasonic cleaner. So I am now just sort of separating some of the seals, valve cover seals from the valve cover itself, and we'll put them in an ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll see them later on when they're all cleaned up. Better. I am no professional mechanic when it comes to these things. I probably should have taken a look at the FSM and the disassembly manual, but I decided to wing it, and I've had to speed this up because it took me so long. Surprise, surprise, I am on YouTube, and I'm looking at videos on YouTube because I couldn't figure it out. What I was getting stuck with was getting the last bolt out from those cam covers on the heads. There's a little bolt that's buried underneath, and pretty much had to disassemble all the front of the motor to get to it. Next off is the belt tensioner, and then we can start looking at the timing cover components. It was at about this point that I had just lost interest in getting those little cam covers off and started on the crank pulley instead. Thank God this was way easier than the cam cover bolts. Just whiz the main crank pulley bolt out, and then use the correct set of tools. I noted that the crank hub has a couple threaded holes in it for some bolts. I just threaded those with a couple of bolts, used a plate, and used a puller that I have to then press from the crank shaft snout to pull the hub off. But yeah, it was a bit of a long-winded process. Had to figure it out and get the tool together. So I'll fast forward some of this as well. So finally, after like close to an hour, I was finally able to get the little cover out that was trapping that cam cover off the front of the engine. With that finally removed, I can then start moving on with my life and start working on cracking the cam bolts. What's good to note is when you are taking any cam out of the head of an engine, obviously you have to have it in top dead center. You also have to very slowly and methodically remove loosen the cam caps that are holding the cam into the head, due to the fact that if you just undid them from left to right, there's a very good chance you'll either bend or break some of the more modern cams, due to the spring underneath being quite a lot of force, and they can actually break the cams. You'll see me now start from the front of the engine and work my way out in a star pattern by slowly cracking each of the cam cap bolts just enough, and then methodically work across the entire cam to evenly reduce the pressure that is the springs holding, or the cam holding the springs down. With that successfully done, I'm just going to rinse and repeat and do it on the driver's side head. Now with all the cam cap bolts cracked loose, I can then just use a electric ratchet impact and whizzle the bolts out so we can get down and get the cams out of the head. important note, and this is where organizational skills come into it greatly. As you take your cam caps off, you have to make sure that they go in order. Toyota is really good to us, and they've actually marked all the cam caps with an E for exhaust, an I for intake, and as to also which bridge they belong to. So it'll be an E1, E2, E3, E4. And oh yeah, they also have an arrow facing which way they need to face to the front of the motor. So realistically, they made it as foolproof as you possibly can, but is still really good practice to make sure that as you take them off is the way you put them back in. So that's about all I've got for you on this one. In the next video, we'll get the heads off and we'll have a good inspection, take the pistons out of the block and give it a good old clean. If you've made it this far, you guys are bloody champions. I greatly appreciate you spending your time looking at me doing things in my shed. For then, and until next time, like, comment, and subscribe, please.